It seems like we have the experts in the room to answer every question we have about the supply chain and how parts are moving around in this energy transition. Whoever wants to jump on it first, what's the sentiment globally right now for a big company like Hitachi that's working in so many places to get us where we need to be?
I can answer that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so from a market point of view, because we were or we are in the grid space, right? So we were in a pretty boring market for about 15 years up until the COVID-19, right? So when COVID-19 happened, a flat market which we've had for like 15 years even went down further, and then came the market surge right after that, right? I can tell you that between 2021 and now, our annual market is about 3 times of what it was on an annual basis. So that means obviously that we are in what we call an energy super cycle, where electricity is in the middle of that energy spectrum, right? And from a market point of view, how we see it going forward is that we feel that this super cycle, because of the underinvestment that has happened in the grids for all these years and all these decades, is going to stay with us not for like 1, 2, or 3 years, but maybe 5, 10, or even 15 years.
What is the biggest bottleneck right now that's limiting the amount that we can build as fast as we want to get it built?
Well, maybe I can take it from a transformer perspective, but I think it is valid for many other area. For sure, we are coming from an industry that was deeply underinvested to an industry that now is going at a speed on which not all the elements of the value chain and the supply chain were ready to. For sure, we are facing a challenge on getting enough people on board. So how we are dealing on the scale up of our operation, how our supplier and our partner are dealing with the scale up of their operation. Just to give you example, machines to build new factory or machinery in order to produce even more material. So we are facing this. We are working together with our partners and our supplier, and we are scaling up. And that means the ability to build factory fast enough is good, but not good enough to meet the market demand.
If I could add on the bottleneck, maybe I'll take the US view on the policy side. I think what we still see as a bottleneck is the planning horizon in the US. We don't see really yet long-term planning, which we see in other part of the world. So I think that the FERC 1920 decision of last year that put the horizon to 20 years, I think was a great decision. But the second piece then is permitting. We still see on the permitting side further improvement. It was great to hear the new Secretary of Energy this week at CERAWeek mentioning that as a focus for the administration. We really hope that we're going to see this being unlocked a little bit.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum with very similar sentiments at a luncheon today. Could you expand a little bit about how permitting is really slowing up renewable energy and maybe ways from your perspective, just in general, getting more electrons where they need to be?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Right now, we work on a project, a great project that is bringing power from Canada all the way to New York City, called the Champlain-Hudson Power Express. It took more than 10 years for this project to be developed, and part of it was the permitting aspect, right? So here is just an example to show you that we really need to compress that time. 10 years is way too long, given the urgency that we have in the US to build more transmission line.
Could we speak a little bit about tariffs right now? There seems to be so much uncertainty in the space. Can you tell us how it impacts things from your perspective? I've spoken with manufacturers who have delayed or completely scuttled investments in the US because of the uncertainty around the IRA provisions specifically, and how difficult it would be to get, let's say, solar equipment from China with increased tariffs. How do we get around such a sticky issue, and how is Hitachi finding ways to do business in spite of that uncertainty?
Yeah, maybe I can start from a global perspective. I mean, we are dealing with tariffs since decades. I mean, tariff is nothing new. What is new in this case is the uncertainty by the fact that they are changing very, very often, and that they don't give space to companies like Hitachi Energy to plan it in a proper way. From a strategic perspective, our commitment to US is not changing, because our strategic development is a strategic development that goes on a long run. But I do understand that unfortunately, tariff may have as a consequence the fact that the users are going to pay the consequences, and B, there is anxiety. There is anxiety from the customers and the partners, because they question even the affordability of some of the investment because of the tariffs. So I think that we are going to have a short-term situation where we are going to have bumpy roads, but I'm pretty positive that in the long run, the commitment in US in terms of investment and the commitment in US connected to the energy demand is going to remain intact.
And to give you an example, this week we announced that on top of the $9 billion of investment that the company has already announced between 2020 to 2027, we've announced an additional $250 million in transformer components to supply not only our needs, but also the needs of other transformer manufacturers. And 40% of those investments will be in the US. So that's $100 million that we announced this week that we're committing to the US. So that's just to illustrate the point of Bruno, that we have a long-term vision and we stay focused on it.
I've heard a lot about lead times for transformers and how tough it is to get the stuff we need. What have you guys experienced in terms of an increasing line really jamming up the logworks of how we can get critical components in place?
From a global perspective, because it is important to get the global perspective and then to visualize how US fit. The way it's working is mostly connected to the planning. So we are working very much with partners, both in the utility, renewable, and industrial space, not anymore on what is going to be the need in the short term, but is what is going to be the need in the 3 to 5 or even more strategic period. That will allow us to plan capacity in a proper way and the customer to have a much more resilient supply chain. We are working in the same direction in US, but the fact that the planning piece is not as mature and as in other parts of the world, that makes it a little bit more complicated. But the best way to beat the lead time dilemma is to work on the mid-long-term planning in order to give confidence to the partners that they can get the goods, and supplier like Hitachi Energy that can plan the capacity in a proper way. The global capacity, because it is also important to say that we are managing by leveraging the footprint that we have. We are by far the biggest supplier in the energy space, and we really rely on the fact that we can count on footprint in different locations.
And to illustrate what you say, Bruno, to give some examples to your listener or viewers about the time horizon, we've signed some agreement with customers in the range of 10 to 15 years on the transformer side. Absolutely. So that gives you the sense of how this industry and the conversation with the customers has changed to really take that long-term view, to allow customers to get assurance of supply, and for us to have the time to be able to prepare for those demands.
You know, technology offers to change a lot of what we're doing and the way we do it, especially on the logistics side of things. Is there any advent of anything in particular that stands out to one of the three of you, in particular, how you're implementing AI and machine learning into some of your operations?
I would venture to say that the technology that is needed to really develop the grid that we need to see, especially in the US, that technology exists, right? So that's a fact. It's more about us as an industry to adopt new business model. It's for us as an industry to make sure that we have the right regulatory and model and the right policies. That's really a key piece. When it comes to AI, yes, like every company, I think we're investing a lot, and we are part of the broader Hitachi group, which has an extraordinary digital capability, and so we work a lot internally to advance our solutions and develop new solutions leveraging AI. Sorry.
Right. And I also think that yes, while the technology is there, but it still needs a lot of standardization. It needs modularization and it needs industrialization, so that we can really, let's say, do more in less time, and also try to reduce the cost of that piece as well. And then of course the digitalization aspect as well, to kind of reduce the life cycle cost from an O&M aspect.
But it is fair to say that, like Anthony said, there is a lot from a technology perspective that is already available. It's just a matter on how customer adopt it. There are many elements connected to transmission efficiency on the power quality side. There are major elements about using different material, different gas, for instance, to address some of the sustainability requirements that some of the customers, some of the market have. So the key principle from a technological perspective are the same principle that drive this industry since decades. I think that what Hitachi Energy is driving is a lot of co-creation with our partners and customers to understand how we can squeeze even more or get more output from the same input. And that is connected to transmission optimization. For instance, if you think about life extension, if you think about predictive maintenance, in a time on which delivery is a major challenge from our customers, the possibility to work with them and having their asset extending their life is something that can produce a lot of value for our partners.
Right. I think that one of the things that's really happened is, that with this energy transition piece, the dialogue that we were having with stakeholders, with governments, and with customers has really changed, right? And it's all about, trying to solve the problem. It's not about, a transactional, buyer-supplier arrangement. It's much more about long-term agreements, about frame contracts, about capacity reservations, and even, to try to co-invest in production as well, to find ways how to let's say meet this need.
And to your point, I think it's essential because if some of the numbers that we hear is okay, by 2050 we need to increase the generation globally by 4 times, almost 4 times.
Yeah.
Transmission distribution by almost 3 times. It has taken more than a century to build the grid that we have today. So if in the next 25 years we need to build it 3 times, that scales. I mean, we need to do things differently with the customers and the partners. So that's why we really need to challenge ourselves as an industry to think differently. And again, I come back to the different business model that we've been pushing as an industry for the last couple of years, like capacity reservation agreement, frame agreement. This needs to happen. And also, again, coming back to the policy, we need also to have the right policy so that to allow us to accelerate versus hold back the investment and the speed.
On the T&D side, on the transmission and distribution topic, you mentioned grid enhancing technologies as a way of squeezing a little more out of the system that we have and how integral that would be moving forward. Are there any front runners in that space that stand out to you where you're like, we need to be doing more of this, and these are the reasons why?
I'd say I would maybe to simplify, we need to look at different ways the technology that being deployed, because then if you look at those different technology, maybe you'll come up with a different answer to your question. But the 3 technology that we see that are going to be key going forward is, number 1 is power electronic. We've mentioned that to allow us to control better the grid, to push more power, etc., etc. HVDC technology, which we pioneered about 70 years ago. So that's technology number 1 that we see going forward being key for the grid. Technology number 2 is going to be digitalization, right? That will allow us to have a grid which is more reliable, resilient, efficient. That's going to be really a key element. And then the third one is what you mentioned is we have the duty as an industry to make sure that whatever asset we put in the field is sustainable, right? So that's why we introduced in the US the first SF6 breaker, 420 kV, now almost 2 years ago, and now it's in operation. And since then, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of customers interested in committing to us. So those are kind of the 3 really key technology that we see, which will be needed going forward to achieve what we need to achieve for this industry.
Lastly, just CERAWeek in general, any sentiments that you've picked up on or anything that's opened your mind up to something in the industry you hadn't been thinking about? A solid takeaway so far?
Yeah, I mean, we were with Noaman, we were having a conversation about this earlier today. For us, it's really impressive the number of stakeholders that we've met who are talking about energy hubs to serve data centers. Really, it's really striking. Last year, I don't recall having any conversation on that topic. This year, it's a lot of those. That's impressive.
Right, and the other piece is that gas has made a comeback, right? I mean, outside the U.S. also, we've heard in the past few months, right, that the gas was making a comeback as a kind of a steady state, load, steady state, source of power, right? But here, we see it in a big way, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen to the gas turbine market is exactly what happened to the grid market a few years ago. It's going to be, it was flat for a long period of time, and then it's going to, kind of start to scale up,
And maybe there is also a sentiment or an element connected to the cost of energy. I mean, in many discussions, of course, the topic was with everything that is happening, what is going to happen to the user. So the concept of affordability from a partner utility, in particular on the utility space, is a hot topic. So I'm pretty positive that in the further discussion with our partners, we are discussing about innovation, but also innovation on how to address the affordability piece. And the uncertainty on the tariff doesn't help in that direction.